Hey guys, Telegram Sam here. If you don't already know, I have an Instagram. It's Telegram underscore Sam underscore vinyl. So if you're on Instagram, check me on there. But today's video, we are doing the yearly tradition of the vinyl tag video. This is the 2023 version, obviously. And these questions were created by Rob Walker from Let the Music Play. He's been in the vinyl community for a really long time. But yeah, this is sort of like a tradition within the community, sort of recapping the last year and our collections and the things we love, the things we hate, whatnot. And it's also a good way for people who have maybe been thinking about making their own like record and music related videos to get involved with the community and to sort of showcase their interests in music and what they like and what they dislike. I think the 2021 version was like the second video I ever made on my channel. It's really bad, don't look for it. But yeah, it's a really great introduction if you are looking to make videos in the vinyl community. But yeah, I'll link Rob Walker's channel down below. He's great. But the first question is favorite new release of 2022. I talked about this in my video where I talked about my favorite releases of 2022, but this is Bits and Pieces, Piece de Resistance. Like I said in that video, it's like someone like cracked open my head and looked in my brain for all the music I love and the genres, the tone, the style, and just put it all on this record. I mean, I just love it. It's totally up my alley. Iggy Pop, David Bowie, T-Rex, like that's just all you hear. And also, I think I said like Bauhaus and like 90s Depeche Mode. It kind of has like that gothy post-punk new wave thing to it as well. It's just so great. I love it. Definitely check it out if you are not familiar with this album. Last band or solo artist you saw live. Okay, so the last concert I went to was like in mid-October. It was Marcus King, who is a great sort of like country rock, a little bit of soul artist. I unfortunately don't have anything from him. And then the concert before that, I saw in like mid-September was the Gorillaz. One of the greatest shows I've ever been to. I don't think there was a single person in Moda Center that was not dancing. Literally the greatest time. They sounded amazing. It was the first time in I think over 10 years the Gorillaz toured the US, so it was really great. Fortunately, don't have any Gorillaz in my collection yet. So, and then 2 days before I went and saw the Gorillaz, I saw Kim Gordon on her solo tour. This is the tour she was doing for this record, her No Home record. That was released late 2019, and obviously she couldn't tour because of COVID the following year. So this was her sort of coming back and doing a tour for this album. I saw her in a really small venue that could only fit like 200 people, and I was right up front. If I reached out, I could have touched her. Obviously, I didn't because that's creepy and weird. But it was just like so crazy to be like, oh, there's Kim Gordon, one of the most important people in alternative rock music and one of the most important women in music ever. And like locking eyes with her a few times while she was performing, it was just a very surreal moment, and she put on a great show. Her backing band was all made up of young women who were so fucking cool and badass. The guitarist was playing her guitar with a screwdriver at one point. It was one of the greatest concerts again I've ever been to, and like that atmosphere was so great. And yeah, and this album is really amazing too. Definitely check it out if you have not heard. I think this is her first and only solo album currently, so check it out. Number 3, their first album was the best. I mean, there's not many to choose from this band since they unfortunately didn't release a lot of albums, but I definitely do think this is their best album, Unknown Pleasures by Joy Division. I mean, I love Closer too. I think Closer is an amazing album within itself, but you can definitely tell that there was a certain mood, a very depressive mood, and it was kind of more leaning towards like synthy, goth synthy post-punk. While I feel like this has a little bit more upbeatness to it, like this is diet depression, while that's like full-blown manic depression. But yeah, I don't know, I just love the sort of rawness on this on this album too. Like the bass just sounds very raw. It doesn't sound as professionally fine tuned as to me Closer does. So I gotta go with Unknown Pleasures for Joy Division. Show the vinyl, CD, cassette of an album. I unfortunately got rid of all of my CDs and cassettes since I really haven't listened to them since I was a teenager, and I kind of solely mainly listen to records now. But this was the album, I think the only album that I had on cassette, CD, and record before I got rid of everything, which is Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA. Is this his best album? No, but I don't think it deserves the flack that gets of like him selling out, kind of going commercial. It's like he was signed to one of the biggest labels. He was sort of like commercial Bob Dylan. But I love this album. It's like I don't like to say guilty pleasure because I think you should be guilty for liking someone, but I do love it. It just has this sort of 80s cheesiness to it that I just kind of love. And there are some really great songs on here. Like I love the song I'm on Fire. That's probably like a top 5 Bruce Springsteen song for me. Downbound Train, Working on the Highway. I think the only song that I don't really like is Dancing in the Dark. That's like the one song I wish was taken off of this album. That's like my least favorite Bruce Springsteen song. But I love every other song on this album. I just love this album in general. Number 5, album that starts and ends with the same letter. I just kind of like skimmed my shelves, and like the first one I saw that fit this, I just picked. This is The Acid Test by Ken Kesey. Starts with the letter T, ends with the letter T. But this is sort of a spoken word, sort of psychedelic craziness. I believe it's the first known recording of the Grateful Dead. The Grateful Dead are kind of just like noodling around in the background of Ken Kesey just doing his ramblings on acid. But Ken Kesey is one of my all-time favorite authors. He wrote my all-time favorite book, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He was a big pioneer in the whole sort of acid psychedelic, counterculture movement, along with Timothy Leary. And he famously, him and his merry band of pranksters famously took this very psychedelic painted bus from San Francisco all the way to Timothy Leary's compound up in New York. And Tom Wolfe wrote that in the Kool-Aid Acid Test. I think that's what it's called. Something along that. But yeah, I just love this. This is just like a cool thing to have. This was the Jackpot Records reissue I think they did a couple years ago. That's on like this like pink vinyl. But I don't know. I just had to have this. 6. Born in the Same Year as You. This one was tough because I'm 25 years old, so I was born in 1997. And considering I listen to predominantly older music, I honestly could not find anyone under the age of 30 in my record collection. At least people I could find birthdays for. There were some like smaller independent people. I just couldn't find their birth dates. So I kind of cheated and picked a band that formed in 1997, which would be the White Stripes. This is their debut album. This isn't my favorite album from them. You can definitely tell they're trying to like figure out their sound on this album. But the White Stripes really sort of brought in this movement of sort of this like neo blues garage thing that not the White Stripes, but like the Black Keys would end up doing too, and Jack White would expand on his solo stuff. But again, probably one of the most important bands to come out in the last 25 years. And just a really killer band. Not my favorite album from them. I do love Day Stygiel though. But this is just cool to hear them sort of figuring out their sound and sort of fine tuning what would become the greatest band in the last 25 years. Most listened to album in 2022. This is one that someone actually sent to me, and I was familiar with this band before, but I'd never really listened to their stuff. And after I listened to this album, I just kept on like playing it every other week or so, really, because it's just totally up my alley. But this is almost dropped it. Saigon Kicks by Hanoi Rocks. Um, yeah, it's just kind of this glammy, hard rock. You can definitely hear the beginnings of like glam metal on here. Very influential to the glam metal scene that ended up kind of being kicked off in LA. But yeah, I just love this album. I really want to get more of Hanoi Rock stuff. But yeah, thank you to Vic. I believe he sent this to me. I love it. Most listened to artist in 2022. This has been the year of Roxy Music for me. I don't know why it has taken me this long to get into their music, considering I love 70s glam rock, and they were definitely like early pioneers of it. But I think because they didn't necessarily fit like the T-Rex, David Bowie, Mott the Hoople thing, they were kind of like a little bit more like left field, sort of like art experimental glam rock. I don't know, I just never really got into them until this year, and this is one of the albums I got this year, which is Stranded by Roxy Music. Just so good, and I think Brian Eno said this was one of his favorite Roxy Music albums. Love it, love them. Cannot believe it took me this long to get into their music. Um, Australian artist slash band. I mean, I had to go with like the biggest one of them all, right? This is AC/DC, and I specifically chose Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. I am not a fan of Brian Johnson era AC/DC. That's where I believe kind of like all of their songs sound the same. But I love the Bon Scott era of AC/DC, especially this album. I don't know why. It's just so like tongue in cheek to me. Like the song Big Balls, that's just an hysterical song. Rocker, I'm a problem child. Ride On is a very beautiful song. Squealer, Ain't No Fun Waiting Around to Be a Millionaire. I mean, they were just so influential on hard rock, even metal music, and I just love this album. I mean, I love any Bon Scott era AC/DC album. I would love, like, one of my up their holy grails would be an original Australian pressing of High Voltage, which I think is their best album. Yeah, this album is fantastic. And Highway to Hell, that's like an all killer, no filler album. 10, surprising purchase of 2022. I would say this was surprising to me because, one, I am not a box set person, and I did kind of regret buying this when I bought it, but then when it came, it kind of grew on me, and I realized that this is just a really cool thing to have, and I'm really happy to have it. But this is the 1972 T-Rex box set. I don't know where I originally saw that this was coming out. I think maybe it was the official like T-Rex page that they announced it, and I saw it, and I just like couldn't help but be intrigued by it. But they originally only were released in the UK, so I had to like export it here, and it was very expensive. It was like a $200 thing, and plus I got like the full 6 LP box set that came with the limited edition print of the Slider cover that is signed by Tony Visconti, which is really cool. And it has a 20-page booklet that has pictures, and Tony Visconti talks about his time with Mark Bolan and the band recording this album in 1972 in retrospect, how big of a year that was for Mark Bolan and the band. But yeah, this one has 6 LPs. The first one is just the Slider. The second and third one are a live at Wembley Stadium show. The fourth one is the Born to Boogie soundtrack. The fifth one is Mark Bolan's 1972 U.S. radio sessions, and the sixth one is called T-Rextras. Side A has their live performance from the BBC in 1972, and the B-side has B-sides, their B-side singles on it. But yeah, I remember when I originally bought this, I was like, I shouldn't have bought this. I was like, why did I get this? But I'm such a T-Rex fan, obviously, going by the moniker of Telegram Sam, it's kind of just sentimental to me now. like the connection me and this band have. But yeah, once I got it and I saw the beautiful, this beautiful box with this amazing, beautiful picture of Mark Bolan on it, the presentation, the records are red, white, and blue. Yeah, it's just really well made, well done. The records sound great. I mean, I would say if you're not like a huge T-Rex fan, you don't need to have this. But as someone who has a great sentimental connection with T-Rex now, I don't know, it's just really nice to have. It's really cool to have. Number 11, an artist slash band you're complete on. That would have to be the New York Dolls. Massive fan of the New York Dolls. I have their first two albums. They're self-titled and Too Much Too Soon. They did release 3 records after they reunited in 2004, but they're not that good. So I am happy just having their first 2. I don't need to have the last 3 that they released. Yeah, they're not good. I would love to have OGs of these albums in the future. Both of these are reissues, recent reissues. But I'm just happy to have these albums because I think everyone should have the New York Dolls in their collection. 12, a great run of 3 albums. I mean, I think this is the greatest run of 3 albums, and this band only released 3 studio albums, but that would be Nirvana's Bleach, Nevermind, and In Utero. I mean, these 3 records really defined the 90s and kind of completely changed music forever, in my opinion. Especially what would be considered mainstream music, and of course that Nirvana broke the grunge movement after they released Nevermind, even though I personally think Bleach is their best album. But I did a whole video where I ranked all 3 of these albums and talked about them a little bit more in depth. But Nirvana was a very eye-opening band for me, and they really introduced me to punk. They're still one of my all-time favorite bands. I have the smiley face logo tattooed on my ring finger because I just love them a lot, and they really got me to become obsessed with and love and be interested in music. So yeah. 80s soundtrack. I mean, this is the 80s soundtrack. Purple Rain by Prince and the Revolution. I mean, what more is there to say? I did watch this movie recently. It's been a while since I've seen it. Me and my mom used to watch it all the time because we had the VHS of it when I was growing up. So I haven't probably watched it since then. But yeah, I feel like the movie hasn't aged well. Prince is not a very good actor, and he's kind of an asshole in that movie, and even though he's supposed to be like redeemed at the end, I don't think he really is. But still, in my opinion, it just has a very sentimental thing to me because my mom loves Prince, and I just grew up listening to Prince and watching that movie. But the soundtrack, I mean, it's phenomenal. His best, one of his best, I think Sign of the Times is probably his best album in retrospect. But I mean, I can't believe this is a soundtrack. This is a standalone album on its own. So I mean, it's hard to think about the 80s and soundtracks without thinking about this one, right? What's next? 14, we lost them in 2022. I mean, we lost so many great people this year. It's sort of coming to reality that like we're coming up on like the end of an era, like, especially like since all of the people that really brought us the music we loved in the 60s, 70s, and 80s are really probably not going to be with us for very much longer. But I think the one that kind of like touched me the most was Loretta Lynn. This is her album, Coal Miner's Daughter. I remember watching the movie a lot, Coal Miner's Daughter, with my mom. I remember they used to play it on CMT all the time, and every time it was on, me and my mom would watch it. Sissy Spacek does a great performance in that movie. But as I got into music and as I got into country music, it's hard not to see the impact Loretta Lynn had on country music. She was such an amazing voice. Her writing was phenomenal. Hello Darling, I love that song. The Man of the House, What Makes Me Tick, Too Far, Snowbird. I love that song. And then like later on in the 2000s, when her and Jack White did an album together, they did a song called Portland, Oregon. So, but yeah, she has such a great voice, had such a long, fruitful career, and she's just a legend, and she's just a badass. So that one really bummed me out when I heard about her passing. But she had a great long life. So, disappointing purchase in 2022. I was really excited about this album, and I heard a few songs on from this album when it was announced. I thought they were good, but then when the album came out, I don't know, I was just very disappointed by it, and I really love everything that this artist has done. But this is "Call Me If You Get Lost" by Tyler the Creator. I'm a massive Tyler the Creator fan. He really got me into hip hop and rap music. Especially when I was in high school is when I really got into them and got into hip hop and rap music. When I exclusively grew up in a rock and metal household, hip hop and rap wasn't really something that I was surrounded by. But yeah, I remember him and Childish Gambino like really got me invested into the genre of music and opened me up not to only mainstream or current mainstream rap and hip hop, but also got me to look back into like the forefathers of like 80s, 90s hip hop and rap. Anyways, I really loved every album he's done, but like I was just so disappointed by this. I could just tell like he was like, oh, I haven't released an album since Igor, which I think came out in 2017, 2018, and oh, I should probably put something out. And you can tell there's just not that much passion, or I don't know, I feel like every song kind of just sounds the same, and there's a whole like 10-minute track at the end where he's just talking about how rich he is and all the clothing lines he has, and it's like, I loved Tyler the Creator because he talked about real emotions, real things people in hip hop and rap didn't necessarily talk about, like the feeling of isolation, a feeling of not having friends, and like dealing with fame and how weird it is to have all these rich white kids all of a sudden be obsessed with you. But now he's kind of exploiting that, and I don't know, this just left a bad taste in my mouth. Even though there's some tracks that are okay and I can get with, I was just all around disappointed with this album. Non-vinyl purchase. Okay, so I am a big collector of vintage clothing. And like one of my holy grail clothing items is like an authentic like 60s, 70s Dennis Hopper and Easy Rider full-on leather fringe jacket. I have seen them out in the wild a few times, but either they're too big for me because a lot of them are made for men, or they're just so expensive, like $200, $300 for a jacket. I just cannot bring myself to spend that much money on a piece of clothing. But I think it was in April, me and my coworker went out antique shopping, and we went to this big old, it's like this old schoolhouse, kind of like out in the woods in Oregon. I think it's like an hour and a half outside of Portland. We went to this antique store, and I just saw this in just a corner somewhere on like a shabby mannequin, and it is the fringe, authentic 70s real leather fringe jacket of my dreams, and it fits me like a glove. I'll put it on now and probably wear it for the rest of the video. But yeah, it literally fits me so well. It's like it was made for me. I'd say like the only thing is that it's kind of like a little big in the shoulders, but like I can button it up. It's not too baggy. It is very heavy though. Like this is like legit real heavy leather. And from the tags, it looks like it at least has to be from like late 60s, early 70s. But yeah, I'm just living my Dennis Hopper Easy Rider fantasy in this jacket. I'm so happy to finally have found my leather fringe jacket. I think it was only like $90, which is pretty good considering, like I said, most vintage stores here in Portland would charge like $200 to $300, if not more, for a jacket like this. And the condition is really good. I mean, there's a little bit of like kind of light discoloration on the neck and the shoulders, but it's beautiful. I think I've only gotten to wear it a couple times because right after I bought this, it got so hot in Portland, and then went from being really hot to really cold. So I kind of have to wait until the spring until I can really wear it again. But I just love it. I'm just so happy to finally have a nice fringe jacket. Okay, next up, you found a grail. I actually forgot that I had this and meant to show it in my best finds of 2022 video. But this is the Kill City by Iggy Pop and James Williamson. This is an OG copy, 1977, yes, 1977 copy. But this is the copy that's kind of rare. So it's on green vinyl, but it actually was mastered by two different companies. So side A was mastered by Sterling, I think, and side B was mastered by Curtin, I believe. But yeah, I guess these were kind of rare. To have two different masterings on one record is pretty rare. But I believe only like 30 people have this, at least according to Discogs, and I'm one of those 30. Maggie, stop it! She's clawing up my couch. But yeah, that was a really cool find. Again, I've been meaning to get that for a long time because, as all of you know, I am an Iggy Pop Stooges completist, and that was just a really big one I was still missing. All right, 18, space-themed album or song, and this one's probably my most spaciest, but this is, The Electric Eclectics of Dick Hyman. This is a Moog album, but this actually features the first like Moog-heavy song to ever like be a hit on any charts or whatever. It's the song The Minotaur. But yeah, this is a cool album. I mean, it's really cool to hear the sort of beginnings of like electronic music. I believe this came out in 67, 68. So still pretty early on in the whole Moog synthesizer thing. All right, next up we have Show Some VCLT or A Present. I mean, this was the biggest thing that happened to me this year. This was my biggest grail pretty much since I have been collecting records since I was like 11, 12. So I've been looking for this record for 13 years. I have only seen like one or two out in the wild, but both of them were in really bad condition. And even in those bad conditions, people were still asking like $100 for them. And even though I could have gotten a reissue, I was just always holding out for an original. But Ilya, he has sent me so many great, wonderful packages. He actually just sent me another amazing one for Christmas, which I'll show in the future. But this, like, it made me tear up because it was just so nice. But this is Kick Out the Jams by MC5, an original 1968, 69 pressing, uncensored, gatefold with John Sinclair blurb in it. I mean, I there are not enough words to say thank you to Ilya because this, I mean, I cried when I listened to this because like I've been waiting to hear it for so long on vinyl, especially this particular copy, and just to have someone message me one day saying like, hey, I know you've been wanting this for a while, I have an extra copy, do you want it? And I was like, yeah, I want it, and it's in beautiful condition. I would say like VG++, and to think that this is over 50 years old, and just that it's in my collection. Like every once in a while I'll just like pull it out, not even listen to it, just to be to remind myself that I finally have this, because as you know, I love the whole Detroit pro punk hard rock scene, the Stooges, the MC5, Death, Alice Cooper. I just love that shit, and this was one I just have been wanting for such a long time. I still can't believe I have it. So thank you, Ilya. You know how much that meant to me. Showa album released in 1973. This is our last question. Another great glam rock, hard rock band. This is Mott by Mott the Hoople. I mean, such a great album. You have All the Way from Memphis on here, Hymn for the Dudes, Honolulu Boogie, Driving Sister, I Wish I Was Your Mother. That's a great one. But yeah, just Ian Hunter's a genius. I've been really on the hunt for solo albums, especially the solo album that has Alien Boy, which has Jaco Pastorius playing bass on it. I've been really on the lookout for that. But yeah, such a great, cool, awesome glam rock album. But yep, that was it. Those were my responses to Rob Walker's Vinyl Tag 2023 questions. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.